Are you ready to start?
I'm ready to start.
Okay, I'm ready. Good morning, everybody. Let's go ahead and bring to order our Truckee Meadows Water Authority monthly meeting, Thursday, November 8th, 2022, here in the Sparks Chamber. And let's go ahead and begin with the roll call.
Hartung, Dare,
Here.
Anderson,
Here.
Practice, here, Dewar, Hill,
Here.
alternate. Coletta,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Wonderful. Let's go ahead and have the Pledge of Allegiance.
My pleasure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is good to be with everybody. Just a couple quick business. Chair Hartung is, like we all do, we serve on multiple boards, and he has another board that's happened at the same time because of our change of date. And so I'll be filling in today for him. I know that Dewar is going to be on the line, so Councilwoman Dewar, but we do have a new Councilwoman, Ebert. Is she online? Is she on Zoom?
She should be, but not yet.
Not yet. Okay, when she gets there, we want to welcome her. She's an alternate, and looking forward to get to know her and all of those good things. She's an alternate for any of them, and I know Devin won't be here today. So with that said, let's go ahead and open for public comment. No public comment? Any other possible board comments, acknowledgements, or anything to be shared? Okay. Thank you. Seeing none, I'll continue with the approval of the agenda. Is there anybody who would like to take anything out of order, or are we okay to move forward? Looking for a motion?
Move to approve.
I have a first.
Second.
I have Breckus beat ya. It's a race. Come on. Okay, we have first and a second, and any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Well, any opposed? Passes unanimously. Very good. And then we're going on to approval of the minutes for the October 19th, 2022 meeting of the Tumble Board of Directors. Is there any questions or conversation? Looking for a motion?
Move to approve.
I have a first. Can I have a second?
Second.
Member Breckus seconds that. And any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Also passes unanimously. Let's go on to number 7, discussion and action confirming general manager's appointment of our trustees for the 115 post-retirement medical plan and trust for a 2-year term for January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2024. Ms. Jessica Atkinson.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, Jessica Atkinson, HR Director. Agenda items 7 and 8 are both related to appointments to our two closed post-retirement medical trusts. Both are guided by trust documents. The trust documents outline the requirements for trustees, including the makeup of what the trustees should look like and the term that they should follow. So agenda number 7 is our Section 115 trust. This is the closed trust for those eligible employees that came over to us from Washoe County as part of the merger. The trust document requires that there be between 3 to 5 trustees on this trust. One has to be a member with a combination of experience of at least 5 years in finance or economics. A public officer or employee who manages the fiscal affairs is a requirement for another one of the trustees. And then the third trustee needs to be a beneficiary of the trust. We've typically had 4 trustees on this one, meeting all of those requirements, but this particular trust has 2 tiers of benefits. So on that third bullet, a beneficiary of the trust, our third and fourth trustees each are from each of the 2 benefit tiers. So in accordance with the requirements, the general managers reappointed CFO Matt Bowman, financial analyst Sandra Tozy, Tier 1 trust beneficiary Chuck Atkinson, and Tier 2 trust beneficiary Randy Van Hooser. So the recommendation in front of you today for agenda item number 7 asks that you confirm these appointments for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 and ending December 31st, 2024. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you.
Any questions regarding the recommendations from staff? I don't see any, and so we'll just go ahead and make a motion on each one. So, and then you can present the second one once we're done with the first. So you can have a motion or any questions?
On each person, you want us to?
Not in each one, just, I think you can just, I think just the first one's the first item. So
Okay.
in a moment, we'll have the second one.
Move to approve as described in the staff report.
Thank you so much.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any more discussion? I don't see any. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. And we'll go on to discussion and action confirming general manager's appointment. Same idea on a 501c9.
Yep, so agenda item number 8, this is also a closed trust. This is for general employees of Tumwa. The trust closed on December 13th of 2018. This trust requires that there be 4 appointments for trustees, 2 from the MPAC classification, 2 from IBEW classification appointed by IBEW. So in accordance with these requirements, the general manager has made reappointments and a new appointment. So on the MPAT side, we have reappointments of CFO Matt Bowman, Principal Engineer Juan Esparza. On the IBEW side, we have a reappointment of Water Supply Specialist Steve Enos and a new appointment of fitter welder Richard Drew Merrigan. So again, similar to last one, recommendation in front of you today for this agenda item is just that you confirm the appointment and reappointments for a term beginning January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2024.
Are there any questions regarding staff recommendations? With none, I have a motion.
Move to confirm.
We have a confirmation. Do I have a second on the confirmation?
I'll second that as well.
Wonderful. Any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Passes unanimously. We're moving right along. I think we're ahead of schedule, which we like that. Presentation of financial performance for first quarter fiscal year 2023. Matt Bowman. Hello, sir.
Good morning, members of the board. Real quick, I want to give you an update before I jump into the first quarter financials on our annual audit and annual financial report, or ACFR. So, as you know, usually December we'd be bringing the ACFR forward along with the audit report for approval by the board to then be filed with the state. Last week, day before we were getting ready to file, November 29th, Eide Bailly, our auditors, during a final review of the ACFR, identified a change that's needed in our cash flow statement. It's related to GASB standard number 9, which was issued in 1989, and it's related to something that Tumwa has presented forever with regards to cash and cash equivalents. So I can go into a lot of detail around that, but it really has to do with reclassifying cash and cash equivalents to cash and investments in the cash flow statement. It's really a form over substance type of change, but because it was identified late in the game, we have a reconciliation that we had to put in the financial statements along with a restatement of last year, because Tumwa has always presented it this way, so we have to go back and restate the prior year. So we're still working through the audit officially with Eide Bailly. We've filed an extension with the state of Nevada for the audit report date to be pushed back to as late as December 31st, although it probably won't be that late. I think they'll finish their review in a week or so. And then we'll bring back the ACFR along with the audit report to the board in January. I've asked Eide Bailly to come to the January meeting to answer any questions that the board has, in case you have any. Again, it really is a form over substance change. I agree with the change after going back, looking at the standard, understanding it. I think it's a fair change, but it really doesn't change anything for Tumwa financially. It has to do with cash and investments versus cash and equivalents. So
Before you go on, I want to make sure there's no questions on that, because I've heard a little bit about this. I want to make sure you guys are aware. It puts a pause on what they would normally do right now. So we're just going to have to bump it a month. Not because of something we've done, it's just a change. And it's kind of weird when they all change something that we've done for years. Then you're like, but if any questions, I want to make sure that they can be answered.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these accounting things are esoteric, but sometimes they really aren't. For example, I got a blurb coming across my email yesterday that there's a move, it's bipartisan in the Senate, to add some reporting on bonds, into the NDAA, big federal bill that's passing this week. And, cities and states are pushing back. But a lot of transparency people are saying, go, go, go. And, I'm looked into it and said, go, go, go. So I would like a little bit more information on your January staff report to understand, not necessarily the mechanics of this rule, but just how a rule that's been on the books since 1989, why Tumwa's been over here and everyone else has been over here. Because I'm probably not going to hear the same word over at Reno, I would hope, unless this Rule 9 is widely misunderstood. So how'd you guys get to a point that you haven't been there? And I've always been a little curious about how you do hold your cash investments. Remember the commercial paper world, which I thought was a little unusual, so
Yeah.
maybe 2 paragraphs at
Yeah.
most on that, yeah.
Yep.
Or the auditors, notes will maybe mention it.
Absolutely,
It's something
yeah.
people can understand. That'd be
Yep.
great, thank
Yep.
you.
And for me, it's one thing for us, you're probably right, it would be good for us to explain. But I also don't understand why auditors all of a sudden decide this year to be the one, let's make sure. So with that said, I really don't want you to carry this. I know you already probably, I've hung out with a few other people who think like you, and you're probably like, I want to get this done. But just know that it's always strange to me when auditors change their mind on what they do. So it's just interesting. So any other questions on that? There's nothing to vote on. I just want to make sure you guys understand it. Please continue.
Okay. All right, so with that, we'll get into the first quarter financials. So you should have the staff report in front of you. Couple takeaways to start for the first quarter. Water sales down by about 3%. Consumption was lower in the first quarter. Total operating expenses up by about 6%, and mostly all of that's due to inflation price increases, really with electrical power and chemicals, which are our 2 largest drivers there. Connection fee revenue, pretty flat to budget, pretty flat to prior year as well. So with that, we'll dive in a little deeper. If you go to the second page, this is operating revenues, looking at charges for water sales, which is the first line. As I said, the water sales are down about 1.4 million or 3%. If you'll recall, in August, we had a really wet month, and that really drove consumption lower. People stopped watering, and as you would expect when you're getting rain. In fact, we had the wettest August on record, 1.72 inches compared to 0.24 inches average, so very wet. People turned off their sprinklers. We saw a dip in consumption. Contrast that with the second quarter, October, was hot and dry. We had essentially 0 precipitation, and so people watered a lot, and we saw that. We're going to see that on the water revenue side. It's not going to make up that difference, but it's going to make up some of it. But you'll see that in the second quarter report. If we go to the next page, operating expenses. First of all, salaries and wages, lower than budget as expected. That's position vacancies. We budget for a little conservatively in positions to be filled early in the year. There's always some vacancies and delays in filling positions, so that's why the first 2 lines there are lower than budget. And this is the kicker, services and supplies. So I mentioned this is what's driving our operating expenses higher, specifically power and chemical costs. So there's a couple timing variances in there that's driving some of that variance, but about $1.5 million of the $2.5 million variance is just chemicals and power costs. So power costs, and they're pretty split 50-50 in that. Power costs, I mentioned this in my fourth quarter report that I gave to the board. I think that was in October or maybe September. NV Energy passes along their cost increases through base tariff increases. So while it's not a general rate case increase, it is a power cost increase on a per unit basis, and we saw that and continue to see that. So that's really driven our power costs up. And then chemical costs as well. Our chemical costs continue to go up. Our suppliers are having supply chain issues. We've been able to manage that really well. Will Raymond, our director of operations at the treatment plants, does a really good job scheduling out deliveries. So we've done a good job managing supplies, but the costs are going up, and we have some contracts up for renewal this year. So we're hearing that will continue to happen. So doing the best that we can in those 2 areas, although I hate to say they're fixed costs, but they are to some extent. There's not a lot of savings opportunities there. So we're certainly keeping an eye on that line item, doing everything we can to mitigate increases there.
How does your crystal ball look on that? And I say that you get to stare at this more than we do.
Yeah.
Are we feeling like we're reaching that, kind of that plateau and we get to kind of linger there? Or are we seeing this going to get worse?
You know, I think if you take it all the way back to kind of what the FOMC is doing with interest rate increases, I think in December, they're expecting a 50 basis point increase, which is at least less than the 75 basis points they've been doing. So that sort of signals to me that maybe they are saying that things are starting to slow down and they don't need to do another 75. But at the same time, they're going to continue, from everything I've read, continue these increases into the next calendar year, which tells me that this will continue for some time. I think we're starting to maybe level off just a bit. I mean, again, just because there's the Fed saying we don't need a as big of an increase in rates, which is designed to slow down inflation and slow down that, which is affecting us here in power and chemical costs. So, but no, my crystal ball is really hazy. So,
It's broken, huh?
yeah,
Come on, man.
yeah.
Understood.
We'll go to the next page, non-operating revenues and expenses. Biggest thing to point out here is the second line. This is a fair market value adjustment to our investments. So this is investments that we hold at a fixed rate. When the market rate for those investments goes up, we have to recognize a loss associated with that because that investment is just less marketable, even though we're holding it to maturity. So that's what that large loss is there, and that's the result of the rapid rise in interest rates in the market. I will point out, you can see the line above that, it's a much smaller, but we do have investment earnings. If you look at the second table, it's higher than the prior year by about 20%, $100,000 higher. And that's a result, we'll start to see that continue to tick up, especially over the prior year as a result of reinvesting as these investments come to maturity, they're sold, we reinvest them at these higher rates. We're able to take advantage of that. So you'll start to see that tick up and we'll start to make some gains there. Go to the next page, capital contributions. I want to point out grant revenue. We don't have any for the first quarter. However, we do expect to receive some, both related to FEMA projects as well as federal appropriation from the EPA related to the American Flat APW project. We haven't received any of those yet. However, we will. The FEMA grants are related to both COVID and still some related to the 2017 flood. If you can believe it, there's a couple 100,000 left coming from that still. The third line down is developer infrastructure contributions. That's a large increase. That's mostly timing related. That's infrastructure that's built by developers dedicated to TUMWA following the inspection, and that can kind of come in waves as projects wrap up. A couple of larger projects finished up during the quarter, so I expect that to level off, be more in line with budget. That's non-cash, does affect our balance sheet. We do recognize depreciation expense when we take those assets on board. And you can see the next lines there are really connection fees, and those are relatively close to budget, relatively close to prior year if you look at the table below. So kind of crystal ball stuff. What that is telling me, to some extent, is that maybe development's growth, which has been doing this for some time, is starting to do this a little bit, certainly not stopping by any means. That wraps us up for the income statement. Capital spending on the last page, $3.9 million during the quarter, and cash and investments lower by about $4 million from the beginning of the fiscal year. Still $224.6 million cash and investments. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions?
Number one is that American Flat grant. How much?
Can you turn your microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry. That American Flat.
It's
hard here. Yeah, that American Flat grant. How much is that for?
$3 million.
$3 million. Did we approve the grant application and look that
Not yet.
application?
We've been discussing this with the EPA. This is a new program. That was part of the fiscal year 2022 appropriations bill in Congress. It sort of rolled out the program or rolled out the funding, and then now they're working on the actual mechanics of issuing that money. So we've talked with the EPA about how to actually do it, but we haven't filed an application yet.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'd like to know more about that as it goes forward. It's part of that Inflation Reduction Act, or is it just a new program under their general
No,
appropriation?
I don't think it's part of the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay, yeah, I'd be interested. I'm very concerned, to be, 100% honest. I mean, 3 million is just so small compared to the magnitude of that project. But everything I'm seeing is that, Reno's got, I think, a 50 or 60, $55 million revolving loan from the state for the expansion up to the 4MGD. And, we haven't figured out when we're going to be, I feel we're still in the discovery science making phase of the recharge of the effluent. But the in-the-fence work of expanding the plant has already occurred. So how long will we be having that stranded asset over there in Reno? And I think probably a while. And I'm also interested in, I mean, this is going to move forward with the other side of the equation, but I think it's very unclear all around what it's going to take to, do this. And I would presume that a grantor says, if you're bringing in $3 million, where's the other $170 million coming, or whatever? And I don't think anyone knows that, and certainly can't back it up to rates. So I'd be curious to see how that grant sizes up. And then the other question is the Lakeside Drive main replacement on page 6 of 8. Is that over budget at $600,000?
I don't know what the budget was for that project. I can check on that. And
Okay, because that project is kind of going in tandem with the Watt Street area, Reno Street project. That has been a literal disaster. I mean, they are not buttoning that up for the winter, and there are open trenches and all sorts of stuff, staging areas in people's yards. I just don't know if that $600,000 was an overrun. That is a compounded problem of that project over there. It's been very, very frustrating. And I, through redistricting, am now the representative there, so I've came up to fast speed on it. And then the last question is on your power utilities. Do you guys use much power over on the other side of the state line up in California? Because you mentioned Nevada Energy, but I was wondering if we're a customer over on the California side of any of their regulated utilities up there.
No.
Okay.
Ms. Morris, you have,
Okay.
go ahead.
Thank you, Steph Morse for the record. I just wanted to clarify on the American Flat funding. It's actually a federal earmark. It was a $3 million. So it's not like an actual grant where you apply and it's selected. So the money has already been allocated. It's just that in order to get to us, we have to go through a grant process. And a lot of that work is for the design work. And so it doesn't require us proving up or showing how the rest of the money will be met. So I just wanted to be clear,
Okay.
for that $3 million, it will likely go to the design work that's currently ongoing.
That's a
Okay,
good
thanks.
clarification. I do want to make sure people know, Councilwoman Dewar, welcome to Zoom. You're on there. If you have any questions, let us know. Feel free to shout it out.
Thank you, and I have no questions right now, and I'll
Thank
be
you.
there shortly.
Councilman Anderson or Member Hill, do you have any? Okay. Do you need us to approve?
No.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you and how well you've worked with all of our auditors next month.
Yeah.
So let's go on to 10, discussion and possible action to withdraw resolution number 312 and remove property located at 9675 Western Skies Drive, APN 140-051-23 from Tumwa surplus property bid process. Heather Edmondson and Stephanie Morse.
Morning.
Hello.
Heather Edmondson. In October, we came to the board asking for approval of Resolution 312.
Can you talk in your microphone a little bit
Sorry.
more? I have.
Thank you.
I have personal problems here, so.
In October, we came to the board asking for approval of Resolution 312 for the sale through the public bidding process of the Western Skies parcel, and that was approved. And after that meeting, we were approached by Regional Transportation Commission, who expressed an interest in the parcel for future roadway purposes. So we are here today to ask at this motion for the withdrawal from the public bidding process on this item for the property to be withdrawn. And then the next item to follow this one will have more information regarding the specifics for a request for an agreement with RTC after this. So on this item,
Oh,
staff.
would you guys, would you guys want to hear about the whole thing before we make a decision on that? Do you want to give us the whole thing? And then how do you want to do that?
Mr. Folletta, is it okay if we take both items at the same time? I know they're agendized separately because they're separate actions. How would you like us to proceed?
Thank you. You can take them both.
Well, this is Councilmember Dewar. I have a specific question about this, and I'd like to take them separate if we could.
Okay, well, I want to hear the whole thing before I make a decision, because I want to make sure I understand all of it. But once we have a moment, I definitely can put a question out there. So you still can ask your question in a moment, but I still want to take them
Okay.
together.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Morris is correct. You could open both the items, then we can have a more general discussion of crossing over between the two. You just need to take action independently when you're ready to do that.
Understood, totally. So I'll go ahead and open both 10 and 11. But Ms. Dewar, feel free. I'll go ahead and go to you for your question, and then we'll continue in
All right.
conversation.
Yeah, my recollection is that we approved it, but it was contingent on checking in with the cities, because we had, I think, 4 properties, and several of us had raised questions about a couple of them. And I am very glad. My main concern about this one was it was right over the roadway, and I had reached out to our Public Works Director to discuss the need, for future development of the road. And it sounded like, yes, there was a need. But I was surprised to see that it was being expressed by RTC versus the city. And so that was fine with me, because I concur with it. So I just wondered, did you actually talk to the city and RTC, or does RTC reach out separately, or how did this all happen?
We were just approached. We were only approached by Regional Transportation.
So Steph Morse, for the record, you'll recall there was a pretty lengthy discussion about these 4 properties, and it was contingent upon other people stepping forward. And so we did, wait to see who contacted us about any of these 4 properties based on conversations that this board may have had with their home agencies. And RTC was the only one who reached out about this specific property. And that's why we're coming back to you now to request to remove it, because we've had some discussions with their staff about either a possible purchase for this property and/or an exchange, which is the next agenda item that we are seeking authorization for.
Understood. So, from my understanding, then you put it out there to everybody again and waiting to hear back from everybody, and you heard back from RTC. And so, I think does that answer your question, Ms. Dewar? I think I felt like it did.
Yeah, what I did was I asked, I think what had happened, just, backstory. I think I discussed it with Public Works, and they reached out to RTC.
We can't hear you
and they
very
probably
well,
thought it was
just so you know. So I think I heard you say it does answer the question, but we want to make sure that I give you respect on that.
Okay, let me see
There
if I
you go.
can
That's
switch
better.
my-
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead and say what you said again. I heard you say yes.
Yes. Yes, I was saying, I think the process was I talked to our Public Works, and our Public Works reached out to RTC, and they decided it was more appropriate regional than a local road, so.
That
that's
makes
it.
sense
So
to me.
thank you for going through the process. That's what I really want to get across, is that that's what we asked you to do, and it happened. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Let's go ahead and continue and to open up the second, and then we'll come back and voting on all.
So after being approached by Regional Transportation Commission, Tumwa staff met with RTC to discuss a land exchange for a future tank site or a purchase of the property, and both options appear viable to both agencies. We just do not have the exact terms of an agreement at this time, but we do have the opportunity between a surplus property that they have and our surplus property to either continue discussion for an exchange and/or a purchase of the property.
It'd be wise for us, it would seem, to make sure we present this where you guys have enough room and latitude to make the discussion necessary without having to keep bringing back us together if we're okay with that.
Right, so Steph Morris, for the record, the request is to authorize the general manager to negotiate and enter into a contract either for a straight sell or possible exchange and sale. We would obviously be seeking to reach that fair market value, but they do have a piece of property that is very valuable in terms of us being able to put a tank site. We've looked at other spots, and so we would take all of that into consideration, advise the general manager, and so we are seeking authorization to go ahead and negotiate and execute that at this time.
Okay. So any questions on any of that? I think all that makes sense to me, 100%. So let's go ahead and bring the first one. And do you guys have what you would like said on this? I'm sure it has to be exact language. Did you guys have the?
It would be, the language, the motion would be to withdraw from Resolution 312, the property located at 9675 Western Skies Drive from the surplus property bid. That way we can remove it from all the bid documents.
Can I have a motion on that?
I'll make that motion. Doer.
Thank you. We have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
And any other discussion? And I don't see any, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None opposed? That passes unanimously. Let's go ahead and go on to 10 and the language on that. How would you like to? Yes. Oh, sorry, did I get that wrong? 11, you're correct.
The motion we're seeking is to authorize the general manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with the Regional Transportation Commission for the sale and/or exchange of property located at 9675 Western Skies Drive.
And do I have a?
I can also make that motion.
Thank you
Doer.
so much. And we have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any more discussion? I hear none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
It passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. I want to say that I think those are very wise ways for us to function. So continue to look for RTC's land that we want. I think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Number 12, update regarding memorandum of understanding for the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership. I have Kara Steeland and Stephanie Morris is just wanting to hang out with us today.
Good morning, Board. Cara Steeland for the record. So this is just a brief informational item. As we've discussed in previous board meetings, we have been working on a partnership with organizations and agencies in the upper watershed to improve forest health and increase resiliency to wildfires. So this partnership is critical to help protect water quality and water supply infrastructure into the future by ensuring that high-intensity wildfires don't occur near our reservoirs in the Truckee River and its tributaries. And so we're here today just to share that we have formalized that partnership in October of 2022. We signed an MOU with the other partners in the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership, and those partners include the Tahoe National Forest, both the Truckee and Sierraville Ranger Districts, the Nature Conservancy, the Truckee River Watershed Council, and the National Forest Foundation. And so the principal goals of the partnership that are included in the attached MOU in your board packet are to develop a 10-year vegetation management strategy. So we are currently drafting that strategy, and it will basically identify specific projects that are needed to be planned and implemented to target about 50,000 acres of work in the next 10 years. And we're expected to have a draft of that in early 2023. The other goals include improving and restoring forest health and resilience, reducing the risk of high-severity wildfires, protecting communities from wildfire impacts, protecting and securing water supplies and infrastructure, and then a main reason we're collaborating is to identify and augment resource gaps to achieve implementation at an increased pace and scale. As we know, it's kind of slow going, so we're trying to collaborate together to make a more impactful work done on the landscape. And finally, this MOU doesn't obligate us or any of the partners to provide funding or other resources. We are working collaboratively to pursue state and federal grant opportunities and leverage other resources together. And if staff has anything to add, I'd be happy.
I wanted to make a couple notes. First, I wanted to thank our general manager, John Zimmerman, and our director of natural resources, John Enlow, for letting us work on this. It's been very well received, and we've done a number of media requests and provided information on this program. We are modeling a lot after programs that we've seen that Denver Water's done, and when we come back to you later to present, we'll share some of the economic findings they found about basically how much money they've saved by doing this work up front. So it's a very powerful program, and currently the MOU group is applying for planning funds of about $20 million through the California Wildlife Conservation Board. And what we've seen with other 8 water agencies is they're able to leverage CAL FIRE bond money that they're basically on every dollar that's being spent, they're only spending 12 cents. So this group is really not just planning, but also really able to leverage grants and other funds from California and federal funds as well. So.
You know, one thing that, as you were talking, you kept answering my questions, but I do want to just encourage, I know Cortez Masto herself was running around talking very, very much about this. And so I'd be interested to see if there's any kind of matching from what we do on the Nevada side, because they are recognizing the need, even if it's spending in California that protects Nevada. I'm sure you know this, but I'd be interested because we all work very closely with all of these guys as electeds, and we don't mind continue to push those buttons to say, come on, help us out. Any other discussion, any questions, any thoughts? Just Anderson and then Berkus.
Where do the other stakeholders stand on this? Have they moved forward at all on their portion of this?
So everyone has signed the MOU. So all the partners have signed the MOU at this point in time, and we are jointly pursuing some of those grant fundings. And so there's a lot of projects. There's about 5 projects that are in the planning area that are already completed NEPA. And one of the projects was the Ladybug project, which this board helped to fund and authorized to fund. And so there's additional projects like that where we're seeking grants, but there's still a lot of funding gaps. So one of the things we regularly meet about is what are the projects that are ready to go and what are the funding gaps and where can we either look for money. So in the future, we'll probably be coming back to you with a better report on all of that.
Thank you. Ms. Berkus.
I mean, I think this is really exciting and forward-thinking. One question I do have is, because it looks like, the future of some of this management is controlled burns, and there's been problems with controlled burns, and I think it's basically, from what I understand, the science is there that it has to happen, but maybe it's new. And of course, there was what happened in Washoe Valley. So, you want to make sure the right people are doing it, and then the right people are, if something happens, liability goes to those who messed up. And we're not going to mess up. We're not going to have any fingers in any of that controlled burns.
We're not going to be an implementation like an implementation partner on the ground. That'll be the National Forest Foundation, the Nature Conservancy, and the Watershed Council. So yeah, we're not going to be actually implementing any work. We're more on the kind of helping plan and look for funding opportunities.
But check me if I'm, not reading this correctly, but the plan is you got to burn more, right? Yeah.
That's how the Forest Service does close out a project generally with a prescribed burn is how they consider a project to be finalized. But they are kind of the experts on that work.
Yeah, Steph Morris for the record. It's definitely part of the work. It's very difficult to get all of the material out of the forest. But in addition, that is naturally what would have occurred, and you really want that low-level vegetation to burn. And it's not usually just a one and done. And it does, have great ecological benefits, which is why the Forest Service does it. So all the partners are working under a contract with the Forest Service, and the Forest Service is ultimately responsible. They're very stringent about when the controlled burns can happen. So, for example, there haven't been a lot of controlled burns in the last 3 years because the conditions haven't been right. But you did see several happening in basically in November, because the conditions were just right. And so then they hurry up and they get those done. So we would not be liable. We would not be doing that work or contracting with anybody. But I know that they are extremely careful in how they complete that work.
Ms. Dewar, online, do you have any questions?
Like the project a lot. Excited that we're involved. Thank you.
My only question is, you said there's an MOU. We're in the middle of it, but I don't remember us voting on an MOU? I mean, not that I just, it's not a, this is not for action, so I'm trying to understand
Right.
it.
So the MOU, because it doesn't commit to any funding or any obligation, it was signed by staff.
Gotcha.
Yep. And then if there's any funding obligation or ongoing obligation, we would obviously bring that to the board.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. So I'm not crazy. I'm not like, I don't remember this one.
But the MOU is attached to the staff item so that you can
Thank
see
you.
all of that. And again, we're happy to answer any questions.
I think it's great work. Thank you so much. Thanks for the update. What's going on 13? We have presentation of Truckee River Fund activities for calendar year 2022. Ms. Sonia Folsom and Kara Steelan's going to stick around. Don't you go nowhere. I said, whoa.
This is really
You're
Sonia's
stuck
item,
with us
but-
for at least 5 more minutes according to my schedule.
Good morning, Chair, Board, Sonia Folsom. Before you is the calendar year 2022 Truckee River Fund projects that were approved by you. There were 9 in total, and totaling approximately 15.5, oh, sorry, that's from inception. From inception, $15.5 million. And then the total match grants were $25.7 million. That the funding that's available for the spring, which is opening in January, is $363,000 approximately. The projects that you approved basically follow the criteria and guidelines of the Truckee River Fund Advisory Committee, focusing on watershed education programs, restoration, and Truckee River access improvements, bank stabilizations, and improving the wet meadows habitat at Hoke Meadows, as well as Broadhead Park restoration, Phase 2 with One Truckee River. At this point, those projects are still ongoing, so there isn't really much to update the board on. However, there was the KTMB's 2022 Spring River cleanup that they were funded for in 2021. And so some of those highlights are they had about 900 volunteers total gathering trash along the river, and they collected about 5.4 tons of green waste removal, as well as 31 tons of trash.
I think this is fantastic work, and obviously, I mean, these are the highlights of what we get to do and be a part of, so thank you for the update. Is there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question. I know that the tribe, the Pyramid Paiute tribe has come to us about their cleanups that are outside of our area where we focus on, and I was just curious if we'd had any more dialogue with them because they are going east of Sparks for a lot of those cleanups, and then also further up the river as well, but that still affects river clarity. So I was just curious if we could reach out to them and just see if there's any opportunity for us to partner in the future.
Sure, we can reach out to them and talk to them, sure.
Thank you.
I think that brings a good question. I've talked to them as well. Do we have other entities like us that are willing to work on the river as you go into other counties and different places, or does it die off once we leave Sparks? Or do we know?
I'm not aware of any other entities like the Truckee River Fund that are specifically funding kind of this river restoration and education work on the Truckee River.
I think that's probably, I say this, it's probably the bigger question I would like to know is, and maybe, I don't, it might be nice for us to know, because it does little for us to continue to do all this, only to have five feet away us dumping going in there. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean we have the funds to do the whole river necessarily, but it doesn't mean that we close our eyes. And so if I could we could maybe put some pressure on Story County and the mayors and counties that we know along that river to do a little better if we knew what wasn't, I mean, honestly with you, I think I assumed we're doing our job, they're down, it's just all clean, but well, I heard from one of the, I think probably the same person, I bet you. And she's kind of she has pictures and everything. So it gets pretty bad once you leave our area. And so just the work we do would seem more complete if we could know it's being received and warm handoff.
And there is funding available through NDEP on an annual basis through their 319H program, and that focuses on water quality and river restoration and work like that. So that might be an avenue that the tribe or others might be able to take to do some cleanup work.
And I personally would be interested, though, in holding our neighbors accountable. I mean that nicely, or not nicely, however you want to say it. Very much, and I don't mind giving them information to say, we even have funding for you, so go do what you should be doing. But we can't just leave it. So anyway, I would definitely love that information as well. Thank you. Any other questions? Very good update, and I guess Leland, you get to leave now. We do have the discussion and action and possible direction of staff regarding appointments to the Standing Advisory Committee to fill vacancies in existing position whose terms expires December 31st, 2022. I'm going to stop reading there just so you can have fun with it. There's a lot there. Thank you.
Okay. We have 9 members, 6 primary and 3 alternates whose terms are expiring and willing to continue for another 2-year term. I'll reference the chart on page 2 in your report if you'd like to look at that. Little colorful there. The green members show that their terms are expiring December 31st, 2022. They're willing and able and excited to continue for 2 years. The 2 in orange have resigned and expressed gratitude and appreciation for being able to serve on the Standing Advisory Committee. And then that leaves a couple of alternates. John Krompardik, who is the commercial alternate, is willing to step into the primary role. Dale Sanderson is also willing to step in the primary role. And then Ken Becker would like to switch his alternate position from at-large 1 to at-large 2. For personal reasons. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
I have one question. So when these kind of vacancies happen, like, I never hear about them except until you come and tell me they're filled. And I say that as, from Sparks to county to Reno. Is there any way to communicate these through us so we can put these out? We might have people interested in stepping on as well because we're representing our city. I've asked the health board to do the same, and they've started giving us
Okay.
the things. I think it'd be wise.
Okay. Well, that leaves us with 5 alternate positions and 1 primary position that's vacant, and we accept applications on ongoing basis from the
So
customers.
what I asked the health board, just give a write-up and then send it to the prospective people, and then they'll just announce it. I only say that because if not, then while you pretend to pick from the same people, at least it seems, because we're not putting it out there, at least not through city. And so I know I have people in our city that would never know, but they're all looking for stuff to serve on and have a lot of backgrounds and what you're looking for.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Just have one question, and I'm assuming that since staff is recommending these individuals, they're active, involved, good people to have on the organization, right? Is that?
Yes,
Okay.
so this went to the Standing Advisory Committee meeting in October, and they approved that for recommendation. And then they all have financial engineering backgrounds, expertise, and bring a lot to the table when it's time for budget and rate increase discussions, et cetera. Yes.
I assume that, but I figured I'd ask just in case. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
The one we really need filled and the perspective we really need is someone from multifamily residential, a primary representative. And ideally, in my view, that would be a tenant in a large apartment complex. Could be, not large, but ideally more than a twoplex, duplex, up to, we have some really large ones. And I do hear from those folks occasionally on some billing permutations when you're in a multifamily, because they pass on your bill, and can they tag on, what sort of fee do they tag on, and how does that come to folks? And I know Ms. Pullman, at one point, we moved her to alternate in hope that we would get someone representing a tenant position. A lot of communities are starting to realize, and I know Reno's, there's some awareness, almost half of our residents are tenants. And this is a real opportunity to have a tenant perspective represented in an advisory board that, has some relevance. So, when you say ask around, by all means, people ask around if you know anyone who's a tenant residing in a multifamily building, however they pay their bill, whether it's direct or passed on, loaded into their rent.
We did post that vacancy when Mike Shulowich retired from the committee, and we didn't receive anything.
Yeah.
No applications for that particular vacancy. With that, we can, through Mr. Zimmerman, we can let you know what vacancies are available and parameters of those to notify
Yeah.
your committees and subcommittees.
And someone in a condominium association, like a high-rise condominium association, would be, I think, allowed. Don't you think?
I,
I think multifamily, from the way that we look at it, is condominium. One connection, 1 meter.
Yeah. Mr.
I
Chairman?
think so, as long as they're a TUMWA customer,
Yeah.
and they
Okay.
fill the parameters of a multifamily
Yeah.
representative, yes.
Ms. Hill?
Thank you. Councilwoman Breckus, didn't Reno have a tenant advisory committee? Did that disband or?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
really unfortunate. It was set up as an interim board, and it had 2 meetings. COVID hit. We closed all of our boards and then expired.
Oh, okay.
And it was really going to be geared up for the legislative session. And then, the legislative session happened and the board had never met, and now it's at sunset.
Okay. I just was curious.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think we can help if we can get that information, and we'll make sure we announce it. And I don't disagree at all. I think having these advisory boards are fantastic to open the door for us to understand perspective, so. Thank you. Do you need us to, this is for possible action, do you need us to?
Yes, I need you to approve staff recommendation.
Mr. Anderson had to step out for a second, but we still have a quorum, so we're fine. Okay. So I'm looking for a motion on 14.
Yeah, I'll motion to make the suggested appointments.
And I have a
Second.
first. I have a second.
Second doer.
Any other discussion? I see none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
None. And welcome them all to the board.
Thank you.
Tell them we said thank you. Yes.
And I'll get you the list as soon as I can.
Just to clarify, I don't know that I want the list. I think I want it to go to my city manager
Yes.
and to the county.
Well, and I won't.
Yeah.
You want, okay.
Well, you can send it to all of us, but I'm interested in our city when it comes to, we have, at the beginning, as we start every meeting, we make announcements of things that are open. And that's where we would put that in there and say, hey, if you're interested, because obviously this affects anybody in our city.
And for you, Member Breckus, would you like it directly or?
Well, you know what? I have my neighborhood advisory board meeting on Monday, and we do have a good audience, and so I will mention it. I've got what I need, and I really do want to push to fill that multifamily, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to get the list, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Naomi.
Thank you.
Okay, we're on to 15, discussion and action on scheduling regular board meeting dates and times for the calendar year. Can you believe it's 2023? Wild. And back to you, Sonia.
All right, last one from me. What you have before you is trying to stick to the standard schedule of the third Wednesday at 10 a.m. here in Sparks Council Chambers with a couple of deviations. The first is Thursday, May 18th, to avoid any other agency conflicts. We will be having that at Washoe County Commission Chambers because Sparks Council Chambers is otherwise occupied. Thursday, July 20th will also be scheduled on the off day to avoid a City of Reno Council meeting conflict. And Thursday, November 16th as well. And then Thursday, December 14th is another different date to avoid other conflicts and getting into the holiday season. And with that, any questions?
I don't have any questions. Any questions out there, Ms. Dewar? We'll start with you.
No.
Okay.
No, thank you so much for being so proactive, Sonia.
And then you'll send out all the invites and put those for us to accept as soon as we adopt this?
Yes.
Okay.
That is very helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're done. We just scheduled for everything.
Yeah.
Paul says yes. Matter of fact, he's going to make a motion, aren't you, sir?
To accept everything?
Yeah, he did. No, I need a motion if we have one.
Move to accept the calendar for 2023.
We have a first.
Second,
We have a
Breckus.
second. Any other discussion? None. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I see none. We are meeting for the
And-
year 2023. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, it seemed like a good time, and maybe you addressed this at the beginning of the meeting, if so, I apologize. We are having some board changes, and I thought it was a good time to bring it up with the calendar, which is that Councilmember Reese is coming on to replace Councilwoman Jordan. And we have a new alternate, which is Councilwoman Ebert. And so these are our two additions or changes.
Thank
So
you.
we'll get them on the calendar too.
Thank you. We did discuss it, but it's never good to
great.
remind everybody. So thank you.
Okay, sorry.
You're good.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and continue. We're on to general manager's report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report except, as you've all seen, the 2023 water year's off to a somewhat positive start. And starting in January, Mr. Hauk will begin his monthly water supply updates for the board. But if you have any questions, Bill's
I
here.
wanted to congratulate him because he's making it snow. We blame you either way. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Is there any questions for the manager? Okay. Okay, we go on and we have public comment. Any public comment? I see none. Any board comments, requests, or future agenda items?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I really want to commend the team for the unused privately owned stored water that we passed down to
Oh, yes,
our
yes,
tribal neighbors.
I saw that.
And I don't know what we've done about this in the past, and I just would like a little bit of history, and perhaps this could be done just via email, not as a board agenda item, but just so I understand when we decide this, why we decide this. I just don't know anything about it, and perhaps the board already does, but that would be helpful for me. And then the other thing is, on our property allocations, and just, I didn't want to get in the mix on the last October meeting when we were looking at all those properties, because I didn't think they'd be a good fit for this, but I'd like to see the resolution for property disposal come back to the board and us discuss if there's possibilities for us to do a regional property trust for affordable housing on the right type of properties, just because that's something that was recommended in the regional affordable housing plan that the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning put forth. And I think if, Tumwa could look at that, Washoe County, Sparks, and Reno, I think there's a possibility that we all could look at our properties for potential, for the right fit, obviously. So those are my two questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're not allowed to discuss, so I have things to say. But the lawyer's like staring at me like, don't you say a thing.
At least it wasn't a glare.
It wasn't. He's like, don't do it. Don't do it. So, yeah, well, we're on to our favorite thing. Well, I want to tell everyone, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving, all that good stuff. And it is December. That means this is holiday fun time. We'll see you in 2023. You all will look a lot older then. So many blessings. Have a great day. We are adjourned.
Okay, all right. Hey.